All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here for the P2P virtual engagement session on maintaining livability in an outdoor economy. I am Amy Camp. We all have just introduced each other. The flow of this next 50 minutes is going to be, I'm going to share a brief presentation on the P2P and the project that we're working on. We'll do a couple of polls and then we will just have a really informal conversation on the topic. So that's what's coming, and I will go ahead and get my slides ready for you. Apologies, Kent and Ella, that you'll have to see this presentation one more time.
I think
Uh,
I can give it for you.
I think you could too. Do you wanna?
No, no.
All right. We are nearing the end of our virtual engagement sessions. This is a part of our community engagement for the master plan project. We have one more after this on March 10th. We're going to be talking about how to maintain momentum over time. This is a large corridor, and we have to figure out how to keep the work going once there's a plan in place. So if you'd like to join us then, please do. And we'll also be out and about along the corridor this spring holding county level meetings. So we will be somewhere near you, and we will have that schedule ready very soon. So if you have any questions in the meantime, let me know. For those of you that aren't really very familiar with the P2P, that's the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh Trail Corridor. It's a corridor of about 138 miles, mostly complete, but there are some gaps, and it uses and connects the trails that you see here on the screen. So it's taking 8 different trails that span 9 counties across both states to create this corridor experience. So that's the project area that we are looking at. The project partners received an ARC Arise Planning Grant to create a regional master plan, and those grant funds were matched by funds through the Just Transition Fund, the Benedum Foundation, and the City of Fairmont. And so it creates a really exciting opportunity to plan for the future of this region based on the trails that I just showed you. And the partners are listed here for your reference as well. This is a plan that's not about trail construction. It's not about trail maintenance. The partners are already engaged in that work. They understand that work. They're working on the gaps. This is about how to really leverage the trails in the full corridor for community and economic development. That's what the work is. It builds upon years and years of past successes. I don't need to walk you through these 3 bullets, but these are just examples of some of the work that's occurred over time. There's a long history of collaboration along this corridor and in these states, and as well as Maryland, New York, Ohio, surrounding states. So this is a continuation of the work, and it's an exciting part of the work because I think this is there are some tough questions as to really how to position communities to benefit from trails in this manner, and we're working to tackle them. So the purpose of the master plan is to develop a community-based implementation plan that will unlock community and economic development potential of the P2P Trail Corridor. That's sort of like the stated purpose. But I'm really interested in this yellow highlighted quote that Kent shared with us whenever we first announced the project. Kent, if you're able to come off of mute, if you're right there, and just say in your own words, why are we doing this?
Yeah, so I've been working on trails for a long time, and I can tell you that It's great work, but we have never reached the potential that we expected in terms of impact in our communities and in with our economy. When we had a study done back in the early 90s, they projected a $5 million annual impact on the North Bend Rail Trail alone, and we've never reached anything near that. And it's because we haven't been focusing on those connections to communities and haven't been leveraging the trails efficiently for economic development. And I'm hoping that this project will turn that all around.
Super. Thanks, Kent. So I'm just going to quickly walk you through the different pieces of this project that will contribute to the master plan document. First and foremost is community and stakeholder engagement. This is a part of it. We also just came off of a full month of programs and activities meant to celebrate trails. We called it Heart Trails Month. As I said, we'll be out in the communities this spring, and we'll have a draft of the plan available for review. So there will be lots of different opportunities for engagement. We are taking a really close look at the infrastructure and assets along the trails and how well the various trails connect into downtown areas. We had Frank McGuire on our team out this winter, actually biking the corridor and taking inventory of all of the infrastructure so that we can understand what's there and what the quality of the infrastructure is, and then we'll take all of this information and create a report, and then we'll create a toolkit to show specifically how communities can better connect. Physically connect to their trails. If you go to the lower right of this slide, we're also working on understanding the market and understanding market potential. We're working with Fourth Economy to create a market and economic analysis for the corridor. We'll, out of that and out of everything that we're learning through this progress, we'll develop an economic development strategy along with a branding and marketing strategy. So we have our work cut out for us in the next many months, but we're learning a lot already. And like I said, it's a really exciting thing to be thinking about. And then finally, in the lower right is implementation. We have to figure out how to continue the work after the plan is complete. We have to figure out how to raise the funds for implementation projects and do the work of the plan. Last couple of things. I'm going to breeze through these. I just already mentioned Heart Trails Month. It was a fun way to celebrate trails, kick off the project in the winter time. And in the month of Valentine's Day, we had people submit love letters to trails. If you would want to submit a letter to your favorite trail along the P2P, it's a really fun, easy thing to do through a web form. But again, this is about like enthusing people about trails in a time of year that's not always the easiest to do. Just a few photos here of some of the events we did out and about in the communities. And ways for you to stay involved and stay in touch. To the right is the web form that I mentioned. It'll be the best like 2 minutes of your day if you tell your story as to what you love about local trails. But we're on Facebook and Instagram. Our newsletter is the best place to stay up to date on the project. We send it out maybe a couple of times a month. You can get there at p2ptrails.org. And I guess that's about it for this slide. So I hope that was. I think these presentations are getting faster and faster, Kent and Ella and Chris. I think I saw you here. So anyway, I want to just now move into, I hope that was informative. I want to move into polls, but before I do, especially Jeff, Sam, Steve, do you have any clarification questions about this project or the corridor? Sam's good. Jeff? Yep, thumbs up. Steve, what's
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just liking your group on Facebook. So
Good.
Good.
I guess from our perspective as owner of North Bend, and I mean we're integral on many parts of this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Okay. So to get the connectors and to get what we need to get done, at least from sorry, got distracted by Facebook. That's a problem. It hooks you. You're just like, oh yeah, I want to friend the P2P trail group. Yeah, did you see this? Anyway, what do you need? What are some of the hurdles and obstacles we have to getting that full connector tied together and getting it like, because I'm new to this as well. I've followed it peripherally, but in light of everything else that our agency deals with, obviously trails are a very, very small facet of one section of one portion of one division of what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean you when you rattled off that list of what your division is responsible for, I thought, oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean I'm gonna answer you, and then if any of the team members want to jump in, that's fine. But I mean there's a need to connect in the Parkersburg, to really realize the benefit on that end of the trail. That connection just isn't there. And if we're talking about the outdoor economy, we need to, figure that out. To me also, and I think to a lot of people, we hear a lot about like the quality of the trail surface as being a challenge for people, and as we're working to create destination appeal, right? And getting that surface up to standard is something that should occur over time as well. So those are two things that come up for me. But Kent, Ella, is there anything you would add to that?
Well, Steve, I'd say most of your corridors that
Mhm.
you control because of rail banking.
Mhm.
And the gaps that exist are often gaps that are there because CSX sold that off to somebody other than the state of West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of out of your reach in that way. But I did have a question as to
Right.
whether you're saying that you would be interested in acquiring more rail corridor as a part of your system, that wouldn't be rail banked.
So, well, obviously, the preface all of this conversation with funding is obviously a challenge.
What?
Yeah. I mean, to give you an illustration, the Senate version of the budget bill, Senate Bill 250, as it passed, not only did I have no cuts, but I was getting an extra $750,000 for our rail section, which is fantastic. And then the House didn't have any uh, finance committee meetings on it. They discharged it straight to the floor and did an omnibus amendment that not only cuts that $750,000 out, but it also cuts me another almost $750,000, 600,000. So depending upon which version in the conference committee, I have a $1.3 million swing
Yeah.
on what our rail section looks like in the time going forward. And so, I mean, funding is an obstacle, but
Mhm.
we do have some tools at our disposal. And I guess that kind of brings us back to my original question is whether it be on the Parkersburg end or a connector end in the middle, um, how many parcels are we talking about? How much track, linear track miles are we talking about? Do we have any idea of the character and quality of those parcels and where
Yeah,
you're
we've done a
headed with
pretty
reversion?
exhaustive survey of all of that, Steve. And rather than get into it now, probably the easiest thing would be for us to send you some information
Yeah.
on Parkersburg to Pittsburgh that, provides you with a map and shows you where those gaps are. And we'd be happy to do that.
Does what
Mhm.
you're going to send me show like detail level of, you know, who owns it, how did they acquire it? Was it a purchase? Was it a reversionary clause in their deed? That kind of stuff.
We can provide most of that, probably not all of it.
Okay. On all of the things that Amy was talking about on the
In West
Parkersburg
Virginia,
end.
the Parkersburg to Pittsburgh section, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I went straight to the North Bend probably because I was out there on Sunday. But there are other gaps and that we should make clear to you. And yeah, we will follow up with you with that information.
That's
And there
fine.
are
Yeah,
surfacing,
yeah.
there's irregularities in the quality of the surface.
Mhm.
But that's really sort of on the manager. So,
Mhm.
the North Bend is maintained by state park systems.
Mhm.
So they need funding in order to do that maintenance and upkeep and keep the surface in good shape. Harrison County is done by the county commission. And so it just depends on who manages it, but it's generally their responsibility to take care of the mowing and the surfacing and all of that.
Yeah. Sam, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to pitch in here, Steve. There's a there is a P2P collaborative group that is headed up by the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. And I think it's been somewhat dead until recently, and I think there's a desire to revive that. Ella knows more about it than I do. She's been involved quite some time. We've had in-person meeting, and I think now we're scheduled to like every other month to at least have a Zoom meeting. Does that sound about right, Ella?
So I think some of this is what this group is taking on right now. We are part of a larger coalition, the Industrial Heartland Trails Coalition. And Sam, I think you're referring to like that larger coalition is still has lead organizations, PEC, Pennsylvania Environmental Council, which Chris is a part of, and Rails to Trails Conservancy being kind of the lead ones. They so yeah, that coalition, which is across 5 states, P2P is just one part of that coalition.
Got it confused. You're right. Yeah. Thank you.
But the most active thing that's happening on the P2P is this engagement right now in the RISE grant, um, and so it's kind of got us activated. Each corridor on in that coalition has its own challenges. Obviously, we overlap on a lot of them, and and yeah, I think everybody's kind of touched on some of the issues with the gaps. Um, so I agree with those issues. Mostly it's acquisition and trying to deal with private landowners.
Great. All right. Thanks, Ella, for that. So all right, let's I'm gonna make a decision here to hold off on the polls. A few of you have taken the poll a couple of times already, and I really want to make sure we get to this livability discussion. So I'm putting into the chat a list. This is the comes from the Sustainable Cities Institute, and these are the principles of livability. I think it's important for us to get clear on what we're talking about. When I hear livability, I hear affordability in my head. It just happens. But there's more than that. So I want to acknowledge that this comes from a group that's, thinking about cities more so than rural areas. But what do you see when you look at this list? What draws you into this livability topic? And I invite everyone at this point of the meeting just to come off of mute and let's talk.
I think for me, the first thing that jumps out is the connection to neighborhoods and communities. I think that's the best way to take enhancements to quality of place and convert that to quality of life that provides opportunities for locals, but also can attract businesses and workforce that can come along with those businesses because of um, these amenity enhancements. Um, Obviously, the conversation has been dominated by there's no workforce housing and there's no affordable housing. Um, and so I think that more points to your thought around affordability. Um, But to me, those things happen when development has sort of obviously outpaced um, sustainable development, and now we're trying to walk those things back and kind of do it in the reverse order. So I think with a trail that's being developed, if people can think ahead and do some of these things proactively, is a step in the right direction.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So I think a part of what I heard there was physical connections to the places where people need to go within their own communities.
Right.
Okay. What's everyone else think? What part of livability are you concerned about or thinking about?
Well, I've been a community development person for a long time. So I
Hmm.
think about community. It's community that is critical. Um, I think when communities embrace trails, they sometimes justify investing in trails based on the tourism dollars they think are going to show up from the users of that trail. And I want to say that like livability should be focused on the community that is along the trail and building that community and that trail. The reasons for building a trail or acquiring a trail, maintaining a trail is for the people who live in the communities along the trail. It should be focused on that. And if indeed we create communities that are attractive and vibrant and active, people are going to want to live there. And the
Hmm.
economic development that we want to see is not about tourism dollars, frankly, not for me. It's about how we make communities be a place that people want to live and bring their small business to.
Yeah. Thanks, Kent.
Just posted in the chat, Amy, quote from Andy Williamson that I've put into a grant that I've been working on. And his quote is, you can see the quote marks there, quality of place is the driving force of today's economy. Um, People and the businesses and capital that follow them are chasing quality of place first and foremost.
Yep.
If West Virginia, and of course, the rest of this is something I authored, West Virginia is to compete for economic relevance, then effort must be placed on the community's ability to attract vital businesses and a valuable workforce. And that's talking about outdoor recreation, but we know the primary piece of outdoor recreation is non-motorized trails.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Sam. Does anyone want to react to that?
Well, I
Here,
think
How about you, Ella? We'll start with you.
I was gonna say, I think absolutely. I also, like with all of these questions and issues with the trails themselves and the communities, I think often we're dealing with spaces along industrial corridors that um, have kind of mixed ownership, maybe a harder time pinpointing the owners of properties and brownfield issues and problems with what I can never remember what this stands for, but bad buildings, which are basically abandoned, buildings that have issues in themselves. And so I think part of um, combating, say, sprawl or other things, it's to kind of redefine your downtown, and your trail often would be around that downtown and Main Street area, and kind of deal with some of those other issues that may have to do with um, you know, what is the quality of the rivers and quality of the areas that surround the trail. So I think some of these things become more complex and require bigger agents, other agencies, more funding, just to to kind of tackle some of those issues beside trail.
Is it fair to say for this trail corridor that some of the biggest fears that people carry about livability, the things about affordable housing, sprawl, and so forth, um, that that's not very likely for this corridor, or is that not fair to say?
I think it depends on whether you're talking about
Mhm.
Morgantown or Doddridge County, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kid's right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
I do think,
All right.
well, I think that there are questions of having available housing all, the entire corridor. I don't know that,
I think that's right. As far as to affordable, it's available. There's just
yeah,
not to
what's
do.
available, right?
Mhm.
Same with businesses, business space. And like you look at Morgantown and there's a few developers own all of the river corridor and they can set that price of how much they want to rent the space, whether or not whether there's interested businesses that want to go in, um, and could be supported by trail. But I think that there's, other complexities to doing that with the property ownership. Whereas in a rural community, I think you're dealing more with, is there enough population to support the business throughout the season? Like on and off season and all of how that works. So, we do have somewhat different challenges.
Yeah. Somebody said to me once a few years ago, uh, she said, I challenge you to find a community that doesn't wrestle with quality, affordable housing. And her point was, I don't think you'll find it. Right? So we bring this into the business side as well, right? The challenges we're facing with some of the properties and the communities along the trail. Um, I think something the title of this session around maintaining livability suggests that all of the communities along the P2P are livable. And as I was preparing for this session, um, I don't know, I started to think about that. And I wanted to ask you, how livable are the communities along the P2P currently?
You mean, are there people living there?
Oh no, like quality of
Uh,
um
yeah.
just
Well,
the quality of life in the communities.
right.
Hmm.
I think I have kind of grown up around the watching the success of the trail towns along the Great Allegheny Passage. And it'd be interesting to find those locals who have lived there throughout that whole process and seeing, um, the changes in their community from it. And, but right now, I would say there's a lot struggling um, and you have, I can think of some towns where you don't have a gas station, you don't have restaurants, you don't have a place to get groceries. You're driving 50 miles, 40 miles to get to a place to do that, to get any of those things. So very uh, uh, just low on amenities, I would guess, and uh, and that's a challenge. If and probably driving that distance to get to their work, as well, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that those are all really good tangible examples. What's everyone else think?
I was in a
Think it's
community once where the issue of gentrification came up, and the community's response to that was, damn, we could use some gentrification here.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's a matter of
Uh,
expectation.
Say more about that.
Um, some people prefer to live in Clarksburg, and some people would rather live out away, where it's quiet. Um, uh, my wife and I, when I took a promotion to Charleston, decided we didn't want to live in Charleston. Um, and so we live in Weston, on a gravel road where we have about 10 vehicles go by every day. And that value is important to us. Um, when you define community, I was at North Bend for a couple of years. Some of you know very well the little town, the little community of Cornwallis. Is that a community? I don't know if it's a community, but there are people who live there and they choose to live there in some way, or maybe that's what they can afford. But I
And if
think
you
there
ask them where they're from, they don't say Caro, they say Cornwallis.
Cornwallis. I think that Um, it's a matter of choice and what their expectations are and what they can afford and their desire to live out. Um, and there's a lot of West Virginians that are that way, for an assortment of reasons that's broad, and swings the pendulum on either side.
Yeah. I One of the things I'm hearing is sort of like there's two sides to this coin. There's the what do we want to protect against and what do we want to improve to make communities more livable. Um, you can let me know if you're not seeing it that way, but that's kind of like what I'm hearing. Oh, Chris pops up in the chat. Let's see. I'd say that goes beyond just West Virginia and is representative of most of Appalachia. Yeah. Yeah. Um, and these are perspectives that are important to be bringing into this conversation as we are on the early end of this work before we, go and do our in-person meetings. So I really do appreciate all of these perspectives. Jeff, what were you going to say?
I was going to say, because I was looking back on the list that sort of defines livability and how different people are going to interpret that. A lot of people are just fine with, why would you change this perfect place that I live? Because that's their vision of what makes it a great place. And it could be that, like in Sam's example, like a lot of people, 10 cars passing their house each day might be 10 too many, right? So, or other people, want to be able to hop on their bike and ride down to the trail, ride over to the grocery store, and having a lot of people around an activity is like what they're actually looking for. So I think that's super important to acknowledge. I know Amy, in your work going into communities and making sure they're defining what these things mean is like the most important piece. And I would say that's even more important in sort of some of these like rural Appalachia areas, is that you want to be able to extract what these characteristics are, not say, oh, well, you should do this or that, or you need this trail because of these reasons. Um, so I would say it's kind of a moving target, whether or not it depends on who you're asking, if some of these communities along the trail are livable at this point in time.
If you go into a community and talk to them about improving their community and their economy, some folks will listen to you and come to the conclusion that you think there's something wrong with their
Yeah,
community.
exactly.
Point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent point.
I guess one other thing that I'll just mention, because this is something that I work to communicate all the time, and Sam, mentioning Andy Williamson and the work that OEDC is doing, is part of this work is helping um, communicate that tourism economy and outdoor recreation economy are two distinct economic sectors that have strategic overlap. and to be careful communicating that, oh, well, this trail, has this tourism economy and throwing out a bunch of numbers, because that implies that you're only focused on visitation only. And, our DMOs, which people are great at marketing, is to make sure that on the outdoor economy side, which is focused more on the recreation assets and capacity, that we're talking about these things simultaneously, so that and that people understand like their strategic overlap, but they're different economic sectors. One's focused only on visitation, while the other is focused on measuring economic impact of locals and visitation that's focused on a specific recreation infrastructure. And I would think that Andy would agree that we have a long way to go to sort of spread that gospel, so that when we do talk about these important projects, that everybody's on the, at least in the same room, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. I I had a question around whether we need to shift how we talk about this, so away from maintaining livability, because I do want to acknowledge and respect that a lot of people, are pleased with their communities and their way of life, right? But do we need to shift from maintaining to achieving livability? But now I have you in my head, Kent, saying if we start saying achieving, well, I mean, we already are talking about achieving prosperity, what does that do to the conversation?
Just depends who you're talking to.
Mhm.
In every community, there's going to be those folks that think everything's just fine the way it is, and there's going to be those folks that really wish they had a stronger economy and a more vibrant community, and you just got to go, you go with
Mhm.
whoever steps up to do something.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. I mean, the whole purpose of the project is to have a plan for leveraging the trail corridor for community and economic benefit. That's the purpose. Um,
I think it goes back to what I said earlier about doing it for the community itself. The
mhm,
idea here is, what would you like to see in your community? How would you like this trail to look as it goes through town? What are the amenities you wish you had that you don't have? How do you make this community better for you? Let's not worry about those damn tourists. Let's make it better for you first.
Amen.
One of the things I was kind of considering in this conversation, and Ella, going back to your point about some of the trail towns in the Gap, is that when we're talking about trail development and kind of activation, it's much more of like a complementary approach to community development, rather than something that I think a large industry or something coming in that can be disruptive, right? So I think that's part of the nice thing about outdoor rec, is it kind of showcases the best of the space already. So you've kind of got that ability to almost like just amplify what's there first and foremost, rather than really try to change the kind of culture and fabric of the place and the people. Um, which maybe is kind of like a nice little way to spin this, right? It's not about achieving or what folks don't have, or just always talking about potential. It's just really more like, hey, this is one way to show off what you got. Um, and maybe the other kind of part that's related to that little thought is, where I don't know if there's another group of visitors, like this conversation visitor distinction versus the residents, and where do folks maybe from one town over fit, right? If they're riding from their town to a nearby town and still stopping in, getting lunch, I always kind of think of those folks as like neighbor visitors, but not like really out of towners. They're maybe they've driven by the place a bunch of times. They've just never had a chance to actually stop and explore. And some of these spaces definitely like encourage that, I think, like neighbor visitation. And maybe it lands a little bit softer at first too, until folks get used to seeing out of town license plates.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's useful.
I,
And the thing
I
you
like
can
that, Chris. I do. And Amy, maybe the question is, how can this trail make your life better?
yeah, it's a simple and important question.
Mhm.
Chris talked about people coming from the next community over. I mean, I started thinking about, well, what's in your neighboring community that, if you could hop on a bike and, bike 10 miles, like how does that you know, open up your life? Like I wouldn't use those terms, but you know what I mean. I think we all know of examples where people are moving between communities by way of trail. But how can this trail make your life better? Noted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How how can this trail make your community better? Well,
Yeah. One of the things that we is a goal of this project, it's one of the stated goals is to produce a plan in which underserved communities, historically underserved communities, shape and benefit from the outcomes. I think we have to figure out how to make that happen, but what do you think that might look like in your area or along the corridor?
Hmm.
In some ways, I think that kind of gets into, how we actually approach the plan first and foremost. It's good that that's a goal, right? Like we have a goal that's only focused on like actually getting engagement from folks who maybe don't really feel like they're always part of the conversation. So like one, that's a good first step. Step two is, well, how do we actually ensure, that the method in which we kind of embark upon this planning actually truly engages folks? What are maybe the barriers to their engagement so far? And whatever we can do to kind of cross some of those off the list, I think we're going to end up with a better product that really is kind of like illustrates, the value of the place where we're planning for.
Mhm. Other thoughts?
I think part of this conversation is like widening the circle of what is our community. We're trying to get people to think that the next town over is part of our community, like the P2P in a larger sense is um, just like the Forest Gateway towns or the Elk River Trail efforts and the Gap, where you see people recognizing themselves as a part of a larger community. And I think that's a hard thing to deal with, especially around municipalities and agencies that have defined how we think about our communities for this long, and so we need them to kind of broaden that thinking, and recognize that there may be ways that because some other town is improved or is taking these steps that it's going to make it's going to help all of us in that sense. So anyway, I don't know where that fits into your question, but just that question, like I like that idea of the neighbor and our communities kind of getting reshaped by the P2P.
Yeah, I like it too.
I
So,
want to just bring in the idea of the physical appearance of the trail in communities. And I believe that if the trail is improved where there are people, where the community's at, then they'll have a greater likelihood to support of the trail and see its value. And in addition to that physical condition, it's also what it connects to. Does it connect to the ball field? Does it connect to the playground? Does it help connect that small community. And Kent, I'm thinking particularly Caro.
Mhm.
How does that trail and its appearance in Caro help Caro feel like this is something of value? Um,
Mm.
and that's what happens on a park is that we take such care of it and we mow it and we care for it and we paint things and we keep things in good condition so that people feel like when they arrive there, a sense of arrival that that what they're looking at is something that everyone values and feels like is an important piece of my where I live.
I think this work that we're doing around economic and community development along trails is really timely because I can remember I lived in Doddridge County for 25 years, and I can remember not too many years back when the county seat, West Union, had a per capita income that was lower than McDowell County. And
Mm.
that's all turned around now because of shale gas. And the county has had a few years where it's had trouble spending the money fast enough. So it's an opportunity for us to try to impress upon community leaders that they should be investing in more sustainable forms of community and economic development. And I think a plan that does this is going to bring longer term benefits. Shale gas, we know it comes and goes, but it's going to bring longer term benefits for that community down the road.
Mhm. So we have just a few minutes left here. I have a question in the chat. I don't want to spend time on it, but if you know of examples from other places that you think we should be looking to when it comes to livability, um, let me know, please. But with the last few minutes, I just want to ask, what else do we need to be thinking about? Especially to our guests here. Like, what do you want to make sure that we're thinking about as we work on this master plan?
I'd like to ask Steve that since his organization owns most
Hmm.
P2P.
Hmm.
I mean, I know we're going through this exercise and we've got certain questions that we have to have and ask and get answers to and that kind of thing. But really, I mean, practically speaking, from our perspective, if we're looking at this from, you know, are we looking at the existing infrastructure that's already there? You know, are we looking at it from the perspective of the guy going from one town to the other on his bicycle to get groceries at the Dollar General or whatever? Or are we looking more broadly to a long connector of, you know, bringing people over this entire 120 mile, I don't know how many miles this is total, but 100, I'm guessing 120-mile corridor?
Oh, 238 is
230.
the,
Well, I mean, on
yeah,
the West Virginia side,
on the West Virginia
A little over
side.
150, I think, in West Virginia. Is
Hmm.
that right, Ella?
150.
Mhm.
Okay. Anyway, you know, if you're getting this big long, you know, interstate connector of trail systems, then it's 100% based on, I think, tourism. I mean, I think that, you know, you're looking at bringing in people from out of state. I mean, I look at my backyard. Has anybody got a hard stop at 1 o'clock that I keep talking? I I
Well,
I technically do, but in any event, there's the Meeks Mountain Trail system is behind my house in Hurricane, and when you look at, I mean, I've known the Meeks family for a long time, and they said they were going to do this, and I thought, oh, that's going to be a lot of wasted time, effort, and energy. Go to the park. You will see plates from Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee. They're coming there all the time and coming to Little Old Hurricane and going up there over, you know, I think there's something like 18 miles of trails, but they're mountain biking up there. And then we have a mountain bike shop, and now we have a motorcycle shop next to the mountain bike shop, and all these kinds of things. And those are the kinds of, um, I think, improvements. I mean, if I go somewhere and it's like, oh, well, that trail has a really nice base, you know, and all the brush is cleared out, I'm going to think about it for half a second. Oh, well, that's really nice. And then I'm going to move on to doing whatever. If we're looking at this holistically of, you know, going literally from Parkersburg up into Pennsylvania, that's a very different prospect than improving, things near Ellenborough or whatever. I mean, just, name the area. So, I know that doesn't help the discussion. That's certainly not building on anything that anybody else has said in the time that we've been on here. But I think I'm just saying from a high level management structure level, what are we doing? Right? Are we is this really trying to make a long contiguous trail section that goes from Parkersburg to Pennsylvania?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm.
And I do think that it's much more broad than just, trail surface and local community
Sure.
impact. And so when you throw out a question like, well, how would this benefit the community? Well, I mean, I think we have to define what we're talking about, the benefit. Are we talking about, bringing in visitors, setting up rail bike shops along the trail, or not rail bikes, but I mean, biking, are we looking at secondary collateral economic benefits, whether it be, the bike shop owners or, snack shacks or whatever. I mean, and so I know that I'm just kind of sitting here and I'm not really helping foster the answers that you need to answer the questionnaire that you brought us on for this purpose. But I do know that as far as, Kent's mentioned a couple of times, the trail surface is important. And I think that we're planning on going up in May and doing a mile by mile inventory of what the assets are, what their conditions are, what the anticipated costs are, the tunnels, everything. So we can be looking at that. But I think that as we're answering these questions, we also have to define what the scope of what the scope of this is. And
Sometimes the questions are more important than the answers.
yeah.
Yeah, and it's but I think we all really deeply appreciate your time being here and to know what you're thinking about and to have had a chance to connect with you on this. So don't worry about that. And we may want to connect with you about the assessment that we're working on of the corridor, which includes that mile by mile sort of thing as well. So like, maybe we can compare notes on that. And thank you. Thank you so much for being part of this
No, you're
conversation.
welcome. And I hope I hope I helped a little
Yeah.
bit. I wasn't
Yeah.
like, what are we doing here?
No,
But
I think we all agree with, we want both residents and tourists to swing toward trail, right?
Not an
So
either or.
we're not nixing that aspect of it. We're just
and I
trying.
mean, I think back to like when I have family in Jersey, and when the Jersey family comes down, I take them to the parks, I take them to the trails, and they're like, this is so cool. We wish we had something like this. And then when I go visit them, they take me to their places, and I'm like, this is so cool. I wish we had something like this. And I think that we've got to kind of define what is that. This is cool. You know what I mean? Like, what does that look like? Does it look like, I don't know.
I think that we just raised the bar from livability to what's cool.
Yeah.
We want more than just livability. We want coolness.
That's
We
fair.
do in a way that's authentic to the region, right? But yes.
Steve, I hope there's some sort of like pepperoni roll, pork roll exchange that happens back and forth to New Jersey
There
as
we
well.
go.
Should be. Or a West Virginia
Very
hot dog.
good.
I'm sure food will be a part of it.
Yeah, it has to be. Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Really
Yep, you're very
appreciate it.
welcome.
All right.
Anytime.
Yeah. Nice meeting you, Steve.
Absolutely. See
All
you.
right. Bye.
Bye,
Bye,
Ella.
Steve.